Okay, all set.
This meeting of the Jefferson Madison Regional Library Budget Committee is operating under the Albemarle County Continuance of Governance Ordinance, which we understand to be in effect through the end of the month. Welcome, everybody.
Tony. Well done.
Thank you.
So should we move straight into our first and only agenda item?
I think that's fine if nobody else has any objections.
Okay. So just to catch the Budget Finance Committee up to speed, this is the second committee this month to discuss this same issue. The Personnel Committee met last week, and the Personnel Committee has recommended a one-time pay adjustment for staff this fiscal year, so in fiscal year 22. Now this committee is called in order to discuss amounts, and then if there is a recommendation on an amount from this committee, both recommendations will go to the full board to discuss at length at the March full board meeting. So I wanted to give you all a little bit of background information about where we are right now financially in fiscal year 22 so that you can make an educated choice here. Basically, we're looking at a year's worth of vacancy rates, the salary savings that JMRL has seen between what was budgeted for salary. So that's, I'm sorry, I should say for personnel, because it's not just salary, it's salary, and then it's the retirement and the medical payments and all the dollars that JMRL puts into personnel there. Currently, we have our current payroll is 120 employees. That includes full-time, part-time, and substitute employees. 10 vacancies currently. So there's 130 total positions at any given time at JMRL. This fiscal year, we've turned over 13 full-time positions. So that's 13 out of the 78 full-time jobs, and 10 part-time positions out of the 42 part-time jobs. So there's been a pretty high vacancy rate throughout the year. Currently, we have 5 full-time positions, 4 part-time positions, and 2 substitute positions open, which is 8.4% of our total workforce. Also, we're aware of 2 retirements that are going to be happening in May of this year that will impact that. So to show you, to do a brief show and tell. This is the board's monthly financial report, which is you'll find every given month next to your handouts on the handouts page here under fiscal year expenditure. AJ puts these together monthly for your review before the board meetings. And I just wanted to point out 2 things to you. At the top here, we are 60. Can everybody see that? Does it need to be bigger?
Bigger. Bigger, please.
Oh, too big. Okay. So I've highlighted the line that says salaries and benefits through February 28th, 2022, 64% of the way through the fiscal year. So we have paid out 64% of what's going to be paid out during the year. We're made it that far through the fiscal year. Everybody survived. And then this whole big block here at the top is salaries and benefits. And there are, we have only actually expended 58.6% of the budgeted $6.3,500,000. So we are 64% of the way through the year, and only 58% of the 58.5% of the budgeted personnel costs are spent. That comes up to 6% is about $380,000 there. So we're about $380,000 underspent, or will be by the end of the year, of that $6.33 million. Okay, so I share that with you all to say that AJ and I have been working on this, and we're expecting that there will be one-time operational money to spend this fiscal year. It's going to be at least $380,000 between now and the end of June. The Personnel Committee is recommending that this is spent on a one-time pay adjustment for staff. So if the full board agrees, we need the Budget and Finance Committee to make a decision about at what level that gets spent on personnel. So I'm going to show again 2 scenarios basically for you all to review and discuss. The first one is a scenario in which part-time staff get a $1,250 bonus and full-time staff get a $2,500 bonus. So half of part-time staff will get half of the full-time bonus. Basically, what JMRL is interested in doing is making sure that the employees, and I'm going to get these backwards, so AJ, correct me when I'm wrong here. We want to make sure that the employee nets what we tell them the bonus amount is. So JMRL overpays in order to compensate for the withdrawals, the tax withdrawals that will happen there. So the gross is in the far column, E here. The net for the employee is in the next column. So this employee number, this is their start date, basically. They work this many hours a week. They would get $2,500. JMRL would pay $3,870 in order for them to take home the $2,500. So the bottom line for that scenario is a cost to JMRL from the general fund of $369,000 this fiscal year. The other scenario that AJ and I discussed was $1,000 and $2,000. So same split, full-time staff getting $2,000, part-time staff getting $1,000. And the total there is $295,666. So I'll stop share there. Basically, I'll give you the Personnel Committee's reasoning that what was discussed last week for this expenditure. It's three things. One was about staff retention. You can see that we are, just like everybody else in the world, losing staff. But at the same time, we are hiring. One of the problems that we're having, which is not a problem, is that JMRL has been promoting and hiring from within. So when that happens, somebody fills the vacant job, but it creates another vacancy. So Lindsay right here can attest to that. She's got two circulation staff members, one now in a professional job, one working at the reference desk from this year.
Yes, and a third person was promoted from shelver to circulation support.
Yes, so while that person is getting a promotion and they're taking up, they're no longer a salary vacancy, there is a new salary vacancy there. So it's a good thing, but it's a little bit of tail chasing the dog there. The second was for recognition for staff for work during a difficult period of shifting service models throughout this past year. And the last was an acknowledgement that the budgeted cost of living increases next year are not keeping up with inflation at this point. So we are going to have quite a bit of staff getting, assuming budget season goes as we expect, getting over the cost of living increase in order to make it to the $15 minimum wage for JMRL. But the rest of staff that are not impacted by that, which is about half, will be getting a 2% cost of living increase. And of course, inflation is outpacing that at this point. So I think that's enough talking for me. What I'm interested in is discussion from this group and whether or not, Tony, this group could come up with a recommendation for the full board, then the full board can discuss both the merits and the amounts in March.
So my question, and this is a hypothetical or rhetorical question, but how much we are allowed to roll over 5% per year, and 5% of our current budget rolled over per year would be what dollar figure, AJ or David?
It would be, AJ might know closer. Go ahead.
It'll be in the 460,000 range at the 5% of what we can roll over.
Got it. Okay. So either of those proposals fits nicely into.
Well, Tony, to clarify, this funding is on top of that.
Got it.
So this $380,000 projected is on top of the 5% carryover.
Got it.
So
Okay.
because the board is of course relying on that 5% next year in order to fund 2/3 of the minimum wage adjustment. So
Right.
we wouldn't want to dip into that. We are only offering these suggestions because there's anticipated funding on top of that.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Are there any questions besides Tony's question?
I don't have any questions, but I wanted to commend you, David, and you, AJ, and everyone else involved in the fiscal management of JMRL that has allowed for this opportunity to even happen. The idea of having these funds to move forward, I just think is really very impressive. And I often think that budgets are moral documents. And if you are looking at this budget and you are talking about, offering supplemental bonuses to staff in a time of crisis, that feels, for services rendered in time of crisis, for all the other reasons that you delineated, I think it's an excellent idea. And I would encourage offering these at the highest possible amount that we can between the two options. And there are really, truly not enough employees, especially city, state employers that are paying attention to this. And so I really appreciate that, I'm really excited to be on the budget committee to help money get into the hands of those folks who keep the doors of our organization open. So it feels like a really good plan to me. The numbers look good. I feel like we're in good fiscal shape. So it seems like it's the right time to do this.
Wendy?
Can you hear me? Because it says I'm muted, am I?
No, we can hear you. We can hear you through the phone.
Oh,
It's working.
okay. I'm not the sharpest on numbers, so probably not the best on this committee. But if we approved and spent out that, is there any chance that between now and the end of the fiscal year, what's that? How many months do we have left? That wouldn't, if more hiring took place, we would be able to meet those salaries of new hires for the vacancies?
Yeah, that's a great question, Wendy. And AJ and I were talking about that this morning, and we have been budgeting for, for new staff coming in as well. As I said, we are aware of 2 retirements happening, one of which on the benefit plan, which is going to open up some operational money that we won't be paid on the new end, that the new person won't be coming in on a pension plan. So yes, there is money there to cover it within the personnel budget. And if there were some sort of cataclysmic, I can't imagine what it would be. Like if we hired everybody and we were fully staffed, there's enough money to cover it for the rest of the year. If that were to then dip into what we were counting on here, we would go back to the board and ask them to reach into that reserve fund in order to cover it. There's in my mind, a 0% chance that that would happen, but there is funding there if there were some sort of, it's not an emergency, right? What you're describing, but it's like the opposite of a bad emergency. It's a good emergency. But if it were to happen, we have funding to cover it in the budget, but say some other expense came up that we weren't expecting, like say, there was some sort of natural disaster and we had to put out a bunch of money towards something. At that point, we do have the cushion of the reserve fund that the board could dip into should they need to.
And my second question is, I'm just assuming because this is being recommended by both of you that AJ is perfectly happy with either one, or is there a preference? Either of the amounts, I mean, either going.
Yeah, I would say that funding can support either one. Of course, my preference would be the more, but I think the budget can support either one, and that we're in a healthy place fiscally to be able to do either one that you all approve.
Alita,
I agree with you. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Wendy, were you finishing up? You're saying something else?
I with Lisa that I'm certainly in favor of going for the bonus at the higher level because the board will decide anyway.
Yeah. Okay, Alita?
Yeah, I agree with going at the higher level, especially since it's not going to negatively impact the rollover amount that we will have as a cushion in our reserve. So yeah, I'd go for the higher amount.
Tony, do you have a thought between the two?
Yeah, no, I think retention is the bottom line here. I think that's what we're trying to do and trying to make sure, both with the minimum wage increase and with this potential bonus, retention is really what we're after here, and making sure that we can A, keep the people we have, and B, entice new hires. So I'm in favor of the higher amount as well.
Well, that sounds like consensus. I don't, from the board members at least, are there any staff members? So that was just AJ and Lindsay. Any issues with a recommendation to go with the higher amount?
Issue with the higher amount? No, 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 no issue. I think the staff is delighted. And as David pointed out, because of the rate of inflation, they will be particularly happy. The library has been wonderful, and David has been great throughout the whole pandemic. And unlike some places, they all got to keep their jobs and their benefits, and they are very appreciative of that.
Krista is in attendance, I think. Did you have anything, Krista? Raise your hand if you wanted to say anything. Krista, I'm sorry, Wendy, did I cut you off? Okay. And just to clarify one thing, I am personally not eligible for this bonus, so I'm not in it. You know, I also recommend the higher amount, but I'm doing that because I think it's the best use of this one-time funding at the end of this fiscal year. So, you know, for the three reasons that the Personnel Committee discussed. But AJ and Lindsay are, so if you want to, if they wanted to recuse themselves, that would be fine. But at any rate, Tony, it sounds like consensus here that this committee would make a recommendation to the board that would be something along the lines of, you know, seeking a motion to allow up to maybe $380,000 for a one-time staff adjustment. And you and I can work on the wording of that, but
Sure.
If there are no objections to that, then that sounds like a recommendation.
Yeah, I think that's obviously the consensus of the committee, and I think the best thing for JMRL.
Okay. Well,
I have a question. Oh.
please.
Why are you not eligible?
Because my compensation is set by the board. It's not set by
Right. Okay.
by me, basically. Like I can set compensation and the salary structure for the rest of staff, but my compensation is a board level decision. So,
Tony, can we make that recommendation?
Yes, or we can just pass the hat at the next board meeting, Wendy.
well, you know, not to get too into it, but I think this could come up, you know, during the annual evaluation for me. So kind of separated from this process a little bit.
Right.
Because this one, you know, we're mostly, we're concerned about the 129 other staff members, basically.
Yeah.
That's a good leader.
Yeah.
You see what I've been saying all along? I mean, honestly.
Lisa, lunch is on you.
Mhm.
So, I mean, so ethical, just so, I mean, I'm telling you, where Tony and I work, over there at that place, they do not do this. They really do not. They absolutely don't. And if there was some extra money somewhere, they would find a way not to give it to us. So.
Lisa, they need more parking lots, Lisa, come on.
What parking lots and committees?
That's it, right? Yeah, that's what we
We
need.
have our fair share of
Modules.
committees. We have our fair share of committees, don't worry. Krista has her hand up. Let me see. Krista, did you want to say something? You have to
Yes. Yes, I just want to reiterate that I do think that it has been no joke to try to lead the library through this 2-year pandemic. And if in any way possible, the library board could approve our leader for the same, I mean, it's just been unbelievable what he has had to deal with and what we've all had to do in the last 2 years, and all of the questions and expertise that he has had to pull on to lead us through this. And I just, you know, again, anything that you all could do to include David, because we could not have done this without his leadership.
You're making me blush, but thank you all for the very kind words. As I said, it's kind of a separate issue, basically, that the board can discuss, you know, when my evaluation comes up. But thank you, Krista. That was very sweet. Same for all the staff. That JMRL has really the best library staff, I think, in the country. So
Yeah, they do.
yeah.
So I think in the collective memory of all of us on the budget committee, we will all remember that when it comes to evaluation time, and remember that we need to slot in that extra line item for David. So.
Yes.
Tony, while we've got everybody here, can I throw 2 non-agenda items at the budget committee?
I knew you were going to do that. Sure.
Tony loves meetings, so just to get it on your
Almost
radar.
as much as me? What?
More than Lisa. to get it on your radar, AJ and I are also working through the staff equipment budget requests for fiscal year 23. And we should have that done sometime at the end of this month. And this committee will need to review the recommendations that we have there in order to recommend that those are added to the full budget that the board adopts in May or June. So just to get it on your radar, there will have to be another board budget and finance committee meeting either in April or May. And then the last thing is I just wanted to mention, since we're talking about personnel related things that have budgetary implications, of course, the JMRL retirement is administered by the city of Charlottesville, who's our fiscal agent and our HR partner. Currently, JMRL is only offering the defined, I'm going to get this backwards too.
Defined
The
contribution.
defined contribution plan. Thank you, Lindsay. In which the organization pays 8% of an employee's salary into a retirement plan every year. So the employee has no obligation. The organization pays 8%. There is discussion and there is movement about at the city that is not finalized. It's still in the early phases here, that would change, and that after 10 years of service, employees would get a 10% contribution into their retirement plan, which I am very much in favor of. Since JMRL no longer can offer the pension plan, it's a way to reward long-term employees. That could start potentially in fiscal year 23. Of course, it is not something that JMRL has budgeted for, but the city believes that there are forfeiture savings over the last few years, basically, that would cover JMRL for next year. It's just something that the budget committee would have to be aware of and need to increase some spending for in future years. Currently, it would affect about 10 employees, and then there would be, every few years, another one would cross that threshold. So just to get it on your radar, that we'll have to discuss this and make a recommendation to the full board once the city has made a final decision on that.
So maybe we can have that for the next budget committee meeting in April, May. We can have that as an agenda item as well, because we'll probably have a better idea, A, of if it's going to go through, and B, maybe we can bother AJ to come up with some exact totals for how much that would cost.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like a good plan.
Cool. No, David, when you say there are 2 extra agenda items, you're supposed to stretch it out for another 40 minutes. Don't
I thought your goal was always Tony's goal was always the 1 hour meeting. A half an hour meeting, I guess, is not long enough. Is that the problem?
Yeah, exactly. My attention span, just hasn't kicked in yet. So, no, I think we can A, work with the agenda that we had and make that recommendation to the full board and that would be at the March meeting, obviously.
Yeah, that would be at the March meeting. Likely Thomas would want to discuss it and then vote in April, so that there would be time for any public comment or any board members to comment.
And when would employees see this in their paycheck?
It would be a separate paycheck, and if we were expecting a vote in April, we would likely try to set up a mechanism to get staff paid in early May.
Okay.
Assuming that the board said yes, then it would be flip a switch and the city's payroll department would take care of it.
Good. Okay. Any other thoughts from anybody? I would like to thank both David and AJ for thinking of this first, basically, when money is available. As Lisa said, I think it shows a great dedication to the staff. And again, we all want to remember David at evaluation time, but everybody at JMRL has done just an incredible job pulling this whole COVID thing off, as they say. So,
absolutely.
All right.
Okay, do you want to adjourn us?
Let's adjourn. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
all.
much. Thank you, everybody. See
Thank
you
you for
next
your time.
time. Thanks, Tony. Great meeting. Thank you.
And
Give.
I have to do a motion.